Greetings, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Know Your Right workshop. And the title is Understanding VAWA for Men, Women, and Parents. Today, you're going to be hearing from a wonderful Miss April Holloway, um, immigration attorney at the Nigerian Center. She'll be speaking about this process. But before we go into the actual workshop, for those who are probably coming to the Nigerian Center event virtually for the very first time, I just want to do some quick introduction about the work that we do at the Nigerian Center. And I have a very short video to kind of introduce Nigerian Center to you, and after which I would highlight some opportunities to get involved in what we do.
My name is Benga Agunji, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Nigerian Center. The Nigerian Center is the very first Nigerian American immigrant and community center. While we are called the Nigerian Center, we serve all minority and all immigrant groups in the United States. In many immigrant communities across the country and around the world, whether they're Chinese or Jewish or Latinos or even Ethiopians, there is an actual location members of those communities can walk into to support the American dream and American experience. While the Nigerian community individually has prospered, we now have an opportunity as a community to have our own Nigerian Center.
I am most excited to be a part of the Nigerian Center because we are a resource hub. And we know that while a lot of Nigerians we may know come into the country and they have a connection here or there is a huge population that don't have access. I can speak to thinking about maybe 30, 40 years ago when my parents came to the country. And while my dad came to the country through education, my mom came through a lottery. And when she got here, she had to go do things the regular way. You know, she came in New York, hustled, worked at McDonald's for like 2 weeks, and from McDonald's, she started getting, other menial jobs before she was able to meet my dad. They got married, they had children. My mom didn't go back to school. Until she was like 40 to finally start her career. And I know that if there was something like the Nigerian Center, she could have been afforded opportunities, access information on how to go to school or how to start her own business if that's what she wanted to venture into.
I remember my uncle, I think I was like 10. He got deported. I haven't seen him in years because he can't come back in this country. If he had had the resources that the Nigerian Center offered, maybe it would be a different story.
As a pastor, and I can speak confidently for the church community, a lot of pastors struggle with the kinds of immigration challenges that their members are having. And sometimes when we pastors meet, we joke about the fact that there's this thing that is, the don't ask, don't tell kind of thing, a principle that most Nigerians are engaging in. They don't tell you what they're going through. Some of them are dying in silence. By the time they speak up, sometimes it's too late. And I know that as a pastor, I could have, the Nigerian Center will have come handy in helping people to know what is right, having the kind of the right information, speak to the right attorney, have right representation in court, and just to make the journey easier and smoother in the United States.
People come here from different paths, and for the same main reason is to get a better life, a better situation for their family. So there are numerous ways, numerous paths to the United States and to citizenship. So we help people with family-based immigration, employment-based immigration, asylum, refugee cases, student visas, pretty much everything that the law allows us to assist people with the process of immigration.
Just having this center here, it's just people identified that looks just like us, who we can get the resource from. I mean, this is something that even me as a grown-up young person just wanted to come. I wanted to know that it belongs here. I I'm just happy that this is here. I wish that my mom and dad, they were still alive to like witness this experience. From the time my parents came from Kenya, they immigrated to New Jersey, and that's where they actually met. It took years for my mom to find employment. My dad has stayed at the same job for 25 plus years in fear of not being able to find other employment. Not even that, being able to purchase a home, it took them 25 years to buy their dream home. Having the healthcare aspect and having health insurance for my siblings and I. Nigerian Center is providing a service from all crosses across the board for immigrants.
And Nigerian Center provides opportunities with immigration and naturalization, provide home ownership opportunities, access to capital, language classes, and cultural programs.
Learning about the Nigerian Center was a godsend. Growing up, I used to think about how we can share our experiences and our culture. And oftentimes, Nigerian people are so interested in giving back, but there are few opportunities and motives to do so. So when I heard about the Nigerian Center, it just clicked. We're talking about home ownership. We're talking about financial literacy. We're talking about immigration services, not only for people from our background diaspora, but for everybody else as well who can gain from it. I see the Nigerian Center not only as an opportunity to celebrate our culture, but to also share it as well.
I welcome you to be a part of the journey and to be a part of the experience. Welcome to the Nigerian Center.
Thank you for your attention. So at this moment, I want to highlight our upcoming events so you know what we're doing next. So I want to highlight Giving Tuesday, which is next week Tuesday. For those who don't know, Giving Tuesday is the National Day of Generosity. So think about Thanksgiving Thursday, Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday, and Tuesday is when we in the nonprofit community ask that you consider extending generosity to continue the work that we do. So please plan to support Nigerian Center's work this coming Giving Tuesday. Nigerian Center, it's an IRS community tax center where you can file your taxes for free. If you want to be a volunteer as a tax preparer, we are doing an information session on December 4th. You don't have to have any experience in tax preparation or any financial services. There will be a complimentary certification by the IRS to be able to use the software. And there are several roles in which you can volunteer, whether to do the intake, whether to do quality review, whether to help with promotion and ambassadorship and marketing, just to educate the community when it comes to taxes. And this is vitally important for those of us in the immigrant community. Oftentimes, when folks are going through their journey of naturalization, they overly focus on getting that green card, but don't devote the same amount of time to becoming compliant when it comes to taxes, which is a very important aspects of the immigration journey. So this is a free service to anyone who needs help with their taxes. Again, you don't have to have any background experience of filing taxes. It's open to anyone. Please come to the info session to learn more. You can register on our website under events. You can read more about this particular opportunity. Other ways to get involved, if you want to volunteer, please go to Nigerian Center /serve to see our upcoming or open volunteer opportunities at the center. We do have a community partnership network that really help us deepen our impact in various communities that we serve. So if you represent any community, whether as a business leader, community leader, faith leader, in any capacity, please join our community partners. The link to do so is on the screen. It's also on our website as well. If you're not currently following us on any of the social media pages, please do so as well. Facebook, Twitter, now X, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. I should mention that on our YouTube page, we do have a playlist of several of our previous Know Your Right information sessions covering a spectrum of immigration from employment-based to humanitarian-based to VAWA to juvenile status, to work authorization, asylum. So all the spectrum of immigration, we have done extensive recording that you can get caught up on our YouTube page. And just stay connected with our social media as well if you're not doing so. Speaking opportunities, please feel free to reach out to us if you want to provide any form of speaking opportunity or content that will be beneficial to the community. Or if you have an important story you want to share as well, we'll find a way to highlight it in our Know Your Right workshops. If you're not currently a donor to the Nigerian Center, we really invite you to do so. If you want to plan to begin your giving to Nigerian Center at Giving Tuesday, that would be fantastic. And please do not wait till you can give a lot of money. If you can start with $1, we would definitely welcome that. Every contribution counts, especially as we go into a new political season. There's going to be an extensive demand on organizations like ours. And the only way we are able to provide the services we do is through support from community members like yourself. Currently, Nigerian Center is a volunteer-run and led team, and we stay afloat with contributions from everyone. So please consider supporting us. And the best way to support Nigerian Center is to become a recurring donor of any amount, including $1. That would make a significant difference. That said, I want to turn it over to Miss April Holloway to present today's workshop on understanding VAWA for men, women, and parents. April, are you ready?
All right, so I just need permission to share and we will get started. All right, perfect. So if you have any questions while we're going through the presentation, feel free to put those in the chat and we will answer those questions, okay? So we're talking about today VAWA, which literally stands for Violence Against Women's Act. But it doesn't only apply to women, and it doesn't only apply to married couples. So first, we're going to talk about who's eligible for this, and then we'll talk about what abuse is, because what I've found is that there are a lot of times that people are in relationships that qualify as abusive, but in their own definition, they might not think so. So those are the two most important things to go through. First of all, who's eligible for this benefit? It's not gender exclusive. So if you are a man who is in an abusive relationship, this is another way that you can obtain residency. Actually, let me back up. VAWA is a pathway to obtain residency without having to have your spouse involved. Okay, this is a self-petition for residency because you are being abused. Typically, it's used for women who are in abusive marriages, but it doesn't just have to be women. Men can also be abused. This also applies to parents who are being abused by their U.S. citizen or resident child. And it's important to say here, you can still have a relationship with that child and still be going through the process of self-petitioning for residency because of the abuse that you have endured from that child. This also applies to children who've been the victims of abuse from their U.S. citizen or resident parent or step parent. So if you were in a relationship, you were an adult, you're in a relationship with someone who abused your child, but they didn't abuse you, then your child is eligible to self-petition for residency as a result of that abuse, okay? This is also going to apply for those who thought they were legally married, but you were not because of some deceit on the part of that US citizen or resident. So if that person was already married and then they led you to believe that you were also in a legal marriage with them, then you are still eligible for self-petitioning under VAWA. There are even some circumstances where you're eligible for VAWA if you are not in the United States. If you are outside of the country and your US citizen or resident spouse is abusive to you, and that person is also a government employee, you can also apply for VAWA without having ever stepped foot into the United States. So that's going to include an embassy employee, a member of the US Armed Forces. If you were subject to abuse in the United States and then you left the US, you're still eligible if you were abused by a US citizen or resident partner, okay? A spouse or parent or child. It just has to be within 2 years of any divorce or death of that person if you are no longer married. Okay, I saw a question come down. Is emotional abuse eligible? Yes, it is. So the next thing we're going to talk about is what qualifies as abuse. I want to emphasize that you do not need a police report and you do not need physical abuse for it to qualify for VAWA. So let's go into what kinds of abuse there are. There's, of course, battery or physical violence, which we know. However, there are some things that are considered battery that you might not know are considered abusive. If your spouse is throwing things at the door, but they're not throwing them at you, that's battery. They're using that as a form of intimidation, even though they're not throwing it at you, okay? Threatening harm to others. If you don't do X, then I'm going to do Y to your child, or I'm going to do Y to your sister. That's also physical abuse and battery, okay? Now, someone asked about emotional abuse, intimidation and degradation. Those are also abuse under VAWA. You just have to be able to articulate what it is that happened, which is where some people run into trouble. You either need to maybe do some therapy so that you can fully express, what the abuse was that occurred, or you need to go work with an attorney who is familiar with emotional abuse, narcissistic behavior, so they can help you figure out how to word it. Because the issue with emotional abuse is not whether it happened or not, it's how do you explain what it was, right? Then there's cultural or religious abuse. This is another form of abuse that often flies under the radar because people don't always realize when it's happening to them. If you are constantly being forced to participate in the religious activities of your spouse, which are not your own religious activities, that could be considered abuse. If you are being forced to dress in a way that does not comport with your culture or religion, you're being intimidated into dressing that way, then that could also be abuse. If you're being forced to eat foods or foods are being withheld from you that are significant to your religion or cultural practice, that's also abuse. Okay? More people are familiar with the next one, social isolation or forced detention. Okay? So if you're being told that you cannot speak on the phone in private with your family members or your friends, that could be a form of social isolation or abuse. If you're being told that you cannot have your friends or family over the house, that could be social isolation. Or if it started one way and it keeps getting smaller, you can have your friends or family over on the weekends. You can have them over for a Sunday breakfast. You can talk to them for an hour and it keeps shrinking and shrinking. you might be in a situation of social isolation. And it's usually not said directly. It usually comes in the form of your partner is going to make the house messy so that people can't come over and visit. Your partner is going to throw a tantrum so that you don't want to invite people over to come and visit. These are the ways some of these things typically show up. Okay, let me see if I can get to that question. Okay, here it is. What about if the abuse is permissible in the home country culture of the people involved? Okay, so this abuse is going to be measured by the standards here in the United States. So even if something is permissible in your home country or your culture, if it is not permissible under the definitions of abuse here in the United States, then it's considered abusive. Culture is no defense to certain activities. If it's okay to scar the face of your children in your home culture, and you say, no, I don't want my children's face scarred, and your spouse insists upon that, it is now considered physical abuse. There's no cultural defense to it. Okay? Next, we have sexual abuse. On face, that is going to look like being forced into sexual activity. However, here in the US, that's also going to include being intimidated into sexual activity that you did not want to participate in. Your partner is throwing a tantrum and having a fit because you were not in the mood to have sex. And so you decide, well, the only way that I can get them to stop throwing this tantrum so that we can move on about their lives is to give in to them. That is sexual abuse and control. If there is any particular activity that you don't want to participate in, you're okay with some activities, some sexual activities, but not others, and your partner is forcing that on you, that is sexual abuse. Okay? Immigration control. A lot of people think that it's normal that if you get into an argument with your partner, then one might say, well, I'm just going to call immigration on you. That is not normal and it's not okay. It is never okay for someone to hold that threat over your head in an argument. So if that's happening to you, especially if it's happening repeatedly, then that is a sign that you are in potentially an abusive relationship. If your partner is constantly calling the attorney saying, I want to withdraw the application, and they call back the next day, never mind, I don't want to withdraw it. And they call back a week later, I want to withdraw the application. That is not normal and it's not okay. Okay? Having disputes or disagreements, now that is normal. But if every time it comes to the point of, I'm going to call immigration, that's not okay. Okay? Jealousy or harassment. This goes in part with social isolation as well. So if you finally got your work permit and now you want to go out and get a job and your partner is sabotaging every time that you have an interview, or if you met some people who speak your language and your partner is upset because they don't speak your language and they get upset because you're speaking your own language, that potentially is jealousy and harassment to the degree that it might become abusive, okay? And then lastly, we have verbal abuse. If you are being called out of your name in a degrading way, this is where your culture is going to matter, even if it's not defined by US standards as being a word that is abusive. If it is abusive in your culture, then it's also abusive, verbally abusive here. If the word that you are being called or words that are being used to you are degrading in your own culture and community, then that's also verbal abuse here. Okay? Let me see if I missed anything. I didn't miss any questions. So now we're going to go into some examples. so we can identify abuse, okay? Oh, we do have a question that I missed. Oh, I'm so sorry. I actually missed economic abuse, and that's a really important one. Let's go through that. This one is particularly important for my men because my men that I have had as clients to do VAWA with sometimes don't realize when there is economic abuse in the relationship because it's typical in most societies that the man is responsible for all of the bills in the house. But if you are in a situation where you're being told if you do not provide and pay for every single bill, then I'm going to call immigration. If you are in a situation where you get laid off from your job and it takes a little while for you to find a new job, and your spouse is threatening to call immigration or they're starting to verbally abuse you because you're not working, those are signs to look for. If you're in a situation where your spouse is constantly calling the attorney because they want to withdraw your application and then they change their mind, they don't want to withdraw it, and that attorney is charging you more and more money because of all the back and forth, and you're paying that money, then that's a potential issue of economic abuse. Okay? So it's very good to at least talk to someone. You may choose that you want to continue your relationship and work on things because people are flawed and people can change and get better. But it is good to at least talk to someone about what you're going through so that you can understand whether or not it is considered abuse or not. Okay? All right, so let's do some examples. A only eats halal food. B prepares dinner on a regular basis. One night, B lets A know that none of the meat that was prepared was halal, that after they ate it. When A becomes distressed, B laughs and chides A. So the first question, is this abuse? And if it is abuse, what kind of abuse is it? What do you think? Any guesses? And I guess you could put it in the chat or you can raise your hand. If you want to speak, you can just unmute yourself and take a guess. Okay, we've got a couple guesses in the chat. Not abuse. I think it's abuse, abusive. Okay, so this is abuse. Okay, this is actually a few different kinds of abuse. Number one, it's physical abuse. It's considered a battery on your body for someone to purposefully allow you to consume something that they know is against your cultural practices. Yep. It's also, Tammy, you're correct. It's also religious abuse. It's cultural abuse as well. And this can be another one of those things that's considered emotional abuse. Okay, I went too far. Okay. All right, so let's go on to the next one. C marries D, and they agree that C will practice their Christian faith while D will remain Muslim. However, they agree that C will wear an abaya while visiting D's family. Over time, D hides C's clothes so that the only thing she has to wear on a daily basis are abayas. Are we in a situation here that could potentially be abusive? All right, I've got a guess. All right, we've got one person said, yes, that's abusive. Anybody else want to give an opinion? So yes, this is abusive, okay? Not only is it abusive because it's controlling, it's also potentially an affront on C's religious beliefs. Now, Christians come in different varieties, so we can't say for a fact that it is one, but if C says it is, then it is. So if C came to me as a client and described this behavior, I would say, does it bother you, or is it against your culture or religion to wear an abaya every single day? And then they would tell me, and then we would write down whether or not they believe that that is abusive. We know that it's controlling, okay? And chances are these kind of behaviors, what I've seen over my time practicing, these behaviors are not typically isolated. When someone comes in to speak to me and they have one concern, after we have a full conversation, I can usually pull 4 or 5 different examples that the person had not even thought of as being abusive. And like I said, you can stay in the relationship if you want to. Things could change, things could get better. But if it's a relationship that you no longer want to be in, then that's what you want to know. You want to know, is this considered abuse, what I'm going through? Okay, let's do 2 more examples. Okay, E has a well-paying job before marrying F. After the marriage, E is laid off from work. F tells E that if he does not hurry up and get a new job, they will call immigration on E. I actually gave the answer to this one away earlier, but this is a situation that could potentially be abusive. It would require more conversation. Like, how frequently is F making this kind of comment? How long has E been out of work? What are the other dynamics of the relationship? Those are things that I would ask about before saying yes or no, this is a case that would qualify for VAWA, or that would be a strong case for VAWA. Okay? And our last one, G is bisexual. H knows this before they get married. However, after the marriage, anytime they get into an argument, H threatens to tell G's family that she's had relationships with other women. I forgot to say the example above that one is financial abuse. Okay, it's financial abuse and potentially verbal abuse. Okay, now this one with G and H. So threatening to out someone is considered a form of abuse. Okay, it's considered cultural abuse. Okay, but it can also apply in other contexts. So if someone is an atheist, or if someone is Christian and their entire family is Muslim, if you threaten to out that person to their family when they have not told their family about their different cultural, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, that is considered abusive. So if someone is making those kind of threats, that actually is abuse. There's no need to evaluate the rest of the relationship. This on its own is abusive. Okay? Any questions here? Okay, we've got 2. Can you stay in the abusive relationship and still continue your VAWA application? No. If you're married to that person and you don't have a way to get divorced or finalize that divorce, then that's fine. That's understandable. The immigration, USCIS will understand why you haven't proceeded with the divorce. But if you're still living together as a couple, then no, immigration will not grant the VAWA application. It has to be abuse that is significant enough that you are going to terminate the relationship. Okay. Now, the presentation is going to be on the YouTube page, and we do have free consultations walk-in Thursdays from 12:30 to 4:30 if you have any other questions or want to talk about a specific situation. With regards to the other question, if you end up reconciling with your partner after you receive VAWA, that's a different story, and that does happen. But as far as while you're going through the process, they're going to expect that you have terminated that relationship. even if it's not formally terminated as in divorce, okay? So let's talk about the process. Not too far. It is a two-step process. If your abusive spouse, parent, or child is a US citizen, then you can do these two processes at the same time. However, if that person is a resident, then you have to start with step one, and then once step one is completed, then you can proceed with step two. Also, if you're applying from outside of the United States, then you have to start with step one and then wait to do step two at the consular interview. Okay? So for step one, that's filing the I-360. The I-360 is a form that's used for many different kinds of applications. So you just fill out the part that's relevant to you. You can also apply for a work permit and a travel permit at the same time. And then that second step is the actual application for residency. Residency is the green card, which is no longer green. And again, if you're a US citizen, you're doing both of these if your abuser was a US citizen, you're doing both at the same time. One small caveat here, there are actually two different VAWA processes. If you are in immigration court proceedings, there is a separate VAWA eligible for you called VAWA cancellation of removal. If you are not in immigration court proceedings, then you are filing regular VAWA with USCIS. Okay, so just one small caveat about that. And okay, this went to, I did a presentation before on U visa versus VAWA, so we're not going to do these. But I will just note that for U visa, you do need to have a police report documenting whatever the criminal activity was that occurred. But for VAWA, it does not have to be criminal to be considered abusive. And you do not need a police report, even if it's physical abuse. You don't need a police report to proceed with VAWA. You just have to show some evidence, which can be your own statement of what the abuse was. As far as other evidence, you can provide statements from other people, pictures. You can provide copies of messages if your partner was messaging you certain things that were verbally abusive. That can be considered as a part of your evidence too. Another thing about economic abuse that I failed to mention earlier is there are also situations where if your partner is self-employed, for example, and they're forcing you to work for them, but they do not pay you for that work, that can also be considered a form of economic abuse. Okay, we do have a few questions, so let me just go up here. Oh. Can you remarry to someone else during your VAWA application? No. Another marriage will automatically terminate your eligibility for VAWA. You do have to, unfortunately, not get married again during this process. Once you obtain your residency, you are free to get married again if you are still into marriage. Okay. All right. So if you have any other questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. Can the petitioner be also an immigrant or an American citizen? So VAWA is only for when your abusive partner, your abusive spouse, or your abusive parent, your abusive child is a US citizen or a resident, okay? The only exception to that is if that person was a citizen and they renounced their citizenship. If they renounced their citizenship or they voluntarily gave up their residency and you file within 2 years of that happening, then you can still move forward. But if that person is just an immigrant, if that person is a TPS holder, if that person is a DACA holder, then unfortunately those are not going to be qualifying relationships. All right, I'm just going to get this next question. What does the interview process entail? So for VAWA purposes, everyone is not assigned an interview. Most of these applications are granted without an interview. If you get called to an interview, then typically what they're going to be asking is for proof that it is a bona fide marriage that was entered into, because you do have to prove that although the marriage didn't work out, that it was entered into with good intentions. Or they're going to be asking for evidence that it was abusive. They're going to ask you to give your testimony under oath regarding the abuse, and they're going to be judging how you answer the questions as to whether you're credible or not. The other reason that you might be assigned an interview is if you are in immigration court proceedings. If you're in immigration court proceedings, they might have you come in for an interview just to be sure that this is not a false application or fraudulent application. But other than that, most of these applications are granted without an interview. Okay. And is there a time, when does the applicant get a work authorization? The work authorizations, they vary when they come in. Right now, what I'm seeing is about 4 to 6 months after you file, if you are filing and you had a US citizen was your abusive partner, okay, or parent or child. Is there a time span of marriage for the abuse to be proved or that you stayed together? No. There is not a particular time frame that is required. You just have to prove that it was a bona fide relationship and you did, and you went into that relationship with the intentions for it to work out. So let's say that you entered into the marriage and the intent was, that you were going to finish school in the state you were living in, and then you would move to the state that your spouse was in afterwards. And before you were ever able to move, all of those, the relationship just didn't work out. The abuse became too difficult to resolve. You would still be able to file a petition so long as you have other evidence, the conversations that you had with each other, the plans that you made for moving, as long as you have evidence that it was a bona fide marriage at the time that it was entered into. Okay. And also your spouse, child, parent is not going to be aware of you filing this application unless you tell them. The government is not going to call them and ask them about these facts. They're going to judge your application on its own based on the evidence that you present. Okay. And let's see. What if there's an active I-130 application? You can still file with an active I-130 application. And if that I-130 actually gets approved, it adds to the evidence that you were in a bona fide relationship. Okay? So you can still file with an active I-130 pending. Even if you have an I-130 485 pending, and then you end the relationship, you can still go ahead and file for VAWA rather than waiting for that application to be denied or waiting to be called for an interview. What you don't want to do is allow that application to continue processing, and then you receive a green card on the basis of a marriage, and then you don't correct the record, because the government reserves the right to go back and take your residency away from you. I'll tell you a real life situation where this happened. A man came to the United States from, well, I won't say where he was from. And once he arrived in the United States, his spouse had petitioned for him. The relationship almost immediately imploded. Okay. 3 months later, he received his green card in the mail. Okay. And it was a 10-year green card because the process had taken so long for him to come to the United States. He went to apply for citizenship after 5 years, and they went back through the record. And based on the dates that she filed for divorce, and in the divorce filing, it showed the date they separated. They were like, you separated from your wife before you received your green card in the mail. And they put him into immigration court proceedings to remove his residency from him. So you don't want the government to give you a benefit that you are not currently eligible for, because it could be 5, 10, 20 years down the road. They reserve the right to take that away from you. So go ahead and do it the right way. Okay. All right. So again, we do consultations on Thursdays from 12:30 to 4:30, and you can contact Benga if you'd like to arrange a consultation outside of that time, and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for attending.
Well, can we all give a virtual round of applause to Ms. April Holloway for the wonderful, fantastic presentation? Thank you so, so much for all the great things you do for our community. So this meeting is being recorded. You would have access to the recording shortly after tonight. It's going to be on our YouTube page. I just want to go over a few items that probably you joined us late and you didn't catch. First, I want to talk about the opportunities for consultation and things like that. If you're in the Washington, D.C. metro area, every Thursday, please do not come this Thursday. It's Thanksgiving. We hope that you're celebrating Thanksgiving with family. But every Thursday, you're able to walk into the Nigerian Center from 12:30 to 4:30, and that service is free. There is a small fee to do a virtual consultation if you're not in the Washington, D.C. area, or if you're in the Washington, D.C. area and you prefer virtual consultation, please go to our website. The link is nigeriancenter.org/virtual consultation to be able to see lawyers remotely. So that service is available. Now, in terms of upcoming events, December 3rd is Giving Tuesday. We ask that you consider Nigerian Center as your choice of nonprofit to support on Giving Tuesday, December 3rd. It's a National Day of Generosity where folks support a local nonprofit. And more than ever before, nonprofit and immigration justice work needs support from people like you. If you're interested in understanding how the U.S. tax system works from a preparer standpoint, Nigerian Center is a designated IRS community center that does free tax filing for the community. And we are currently accepting applications for those who want to become a certified tax preparer by the IRS. It's a free service. You don't have to have any prior financial services education or experience to do so. You will be certified once you come in. And there are other roles that you can also do as well. Go to the website on the events to learn more about how to sign up for this opportunity. We have more volunteer opportunities on our website. Nigerian Center /serve is where to go to. We have a community partners network. So if you have connections to a community, and while we're called the Nigerian Center, we serve all immigrant groups. We serve everyone that needs our services. If you think our services are beneficial to your community, please join our community partners to help us get the word out to them. If you're not following us on social media, we are active on the following pages. I particularly want to highlight that we have an active YouTube page that has a playlist of a series of immigration Know Your Rights workshop, including this particular one that you can have access to. Speaking opportunities, please reach out to us, particularly if you have a compelling story to tell that helps to educate our community. Please reach out to us. Once again, if you're not supporting Nigerian Center, this is an invitation to do so. Please, we ask that you start, even if it's a $1. The best way to support the center is through a recurring donation of any amount. We are all volunteer-led team. If this meeting has been valuable to you, it was possible because of contributions of people like you. So please go to nigeriancenter.org/donate to start your donation today. Giving Tuesday, please plan to make a donation to the Nigerian Center. That said, we want to thank you all for attending tonight's event. Happy Thanksgiving. and we look forward to staying in contact and staying in touch with you. Bye for now, and we are all released into greatness.